everybody, my name is Kate Berry from the University of Texas at Austin, and welcome to this video on explicit instruction. When we think about explicit instruction, we want to refer back to our instructional platform. We use our instructional platform to think about how we can best educate and support students who are struggling with math. And we have 5 components of our instructional platform. As educators, we want to make sure we're using explicit instruction, vocabulary, multiple representations, fluency, and problem solving. And explicit instruction is really the cornerstone of our instructional platform. So it's really the best way that we can ensure that our students with disabilities and our struggling learners are set up for success. When we think about explicit instruction, I always like to refer to this helpful model from the National Center for Intensive Intervention. And when we're thinking about explicit instruction, we're really thinking about 3 components. We're thinking about modeling, we're thinking about practice, and we're thinking about supports. I'm going to briefly go through each of these 3 different components so that you can understand what explicit instruction might look like in your classroom. So first, when we're thinking about modeling, there's really this preconceived notion that modeling is teacher-directed when the teacher is standing in front of the students and the students are listening. This is really incorrect. When we're thinking about modeling, we're really thinking about a dialogue, a back and forth between teacher and student. We want the teacher to be asking students questions and eliciting responses every 30 to 60 seconds. I always like to think about a tennis match where it should be a back and forth between the teacher and student. Some important components of modeling are, number 1, we want to state the goals and importance of the lesson. We want students to understand why this information is important. Then we want to integrate a step-by-step explanation, again where we're asking questions to students throughout the explanation. As part of our step-by-step explanation, you should include planned examples. You also might choose non-examples here to help students differentiate between what you're talking about. So when we're thinking about modeling, we're thinking about the goals and importance of the lesson, we're thinking about our step-by-step explanation, and we're also really integrating those planned examples. So we're thinking about our topic well before we are instructing our students. And again, importantly, I cannot emphasize it enough that when we model, it is a tennis match, back and forth dialogue between teacher and student. Now let's take a look at our second component, practice. When we're thinking about practice, we're really thinking about 2 main types of practice. Number 1, guided practice, and number 2, independent practice. And we know that students who have disabilities in math and students who are struggling require 3 to 10 times as many guided practice opportunities as students who are performing on grade level. So as educators, we really need to make sure that we're providing enough guided practice opportunities. A lot of times in classrooms, I see beautiful modeling and then immediately kids move to independent work. So as you're thinking about explicit instruction and your lessons, I really want you to be thinking about, am I providing enough guided practice opportunities? Are students having multiple opportunities to demonstrate their understanding of a concept? So guided practice is the teacher working with the student. Maybe it's also peer-to-peer. And we also have independent practice. And independent practice is when the student is working independently, but you are there to support the student. You are there to provide feedback, both affirmative and corrective, and to answer questions. So really making sure that when students are engaged in independent practice, that you are there also to support them just from a distance. So we have modeling, the goals and importance of the lesson, our step-by-step explanations, our planned examples. Then we have practice, both guided and independent. Now let's talk about the third component of explicit instruction, our supports. So when we're thinking about supports, what I want to draw your attention to is that this box falls both underneath modeling, over here, and underneath practice. And this is because we want teachers to integrate these supports during modeling and during practice. And when we're thinking about supports, we're really thinking about three main things. Number one, we're thinking about asking high and low level questions. We don't just want to ask students high level questions like how and why and explain, because we know that students will shut down. We really want to mix and create a combination of high level questions that really help us understand if students are grasping the concepts, and then we want to pair that with our low-level questions to make sure that we're maintaining student engagement and that we're making sure that students are building their confidence. So asking more low-level questions might look like, what is the name of this shape? What is 5 times 4? And integrating that with our high-level questions such as how, why, and explain. So in addition to asking high and low level questions, and again, we're thinking about our tennis match, our back and forth every 30 to 60 seconds. We want students to elicit frequent responses. And this doesn't just have to be orally. Students might respond on a whiteboard. Students might respond through gesturing, such as with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Students might respond by writing their answer, but there are many different ways to have students respond. But we want to make sure, again, every 30 to 60 seconds during explicit instruction that students are having an opportunity to respond. Again, this is a way for you to check for basic understanding, conceptual understanding, as well as to make sure that students are engaged in your lesson. Now, our third component or our third support is very important. This is providing both affirmative and corrective feedback. We want to affirm our students. A lot of our students present with math anxiety. They lack confidence in math. So we want to make sure that we're telling them when they are doing a great job. But we don't want to just say great job. We want to say things like, I noticed that you did a really nice job setting up those numbers. Or I see that you used your word problem schema when you set up and solved this word problem. Excellent. So we want to make sure that our affirmative feedback is specific so that students understand what they're doing correctly and so that we're really affirming their work and not students as a person. We also want to make sure that we're providing corrective feedback. And we want to make sure, again, that our corrective feedback is specific. Corrective feedback should be used as a tool for teachers to understand where students are making the errors. Why did they answer the question incorrectly? So corrective feedback might look like, I see that you did a really nice job lining up those numbers. Can you tell me how you regrouped in the tens column? Or, I see you're working very hard on that. Can you explain how you came up with that product? So really thinking about corrective feedback as a questioning source for us as educators to understand where students are making errors so that we can help correct them. Another support that's not on here that I always like to think about is maintaining a brisk pace. So in addition to asking high and low level questions, eliciting frequent responses, and providing affirmative and corrective feedback, we want to make sure that we're maintaining a brisk pace. This means that if you have a 30-minute math block, 29 minutes and 30 seconds should be dedicated to math instruction. So whatever planned examples you're choosing, whatever materials you might be using, whatever concrete manipulatives you might be using to support guided practice, these things need to be prepared ahead of time so that we can ensure that we're maximizing our math learning for our students. So I always like to think about making sure that we're planned and prepared and maintaining a brisk pace. So just taking a step back at our model, our helpful explicit instruction model from the National Center for Intensive Intervention, we want to make sure that we're thinking about three main components. So modeling, goals and importance of the lesson, planned examples with our step-by-step explanation. We also want to think about practice, both guided and independent, and really making sure that we are providing enough guided practice opportunities for our struggling learners. And then we want to think about our support. So again, these questions, the frequent responses, the feedback, and again, maintaining a brisk pace. So just again, want to direct you back to our instructional platform. When we're thinking about how we can support students with math difficulty, we really want to think about our instructional platform. And this explicit instruction piece is really the cornerstone of any good math teaching that we do. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this math video on explicit instruction. We hope you'll join us for other math videos in the future.